The fourth edict already burns for your world. Embrace the infinite void. Fields of ash and chasms of flame shall restore glory. Your affliction upon her will soon be erased. The mother soul. We that dreamed, we in nightmare, we that are one. Fate belies truth. Fall! We that fail.
Not a world, not a void, something in between.
Mahorwan Karyak! Non Thor! Bright! Ravage! Nothingness approaches. Ata Ori with Mach! Adriatic cannot help you here. The Wildwood's power is mine. You are seen. Take nothingness. So long as you know me. I am the doom at the door. You will fail. Starfire. By the power of darkness. Darkness shall find you. You will so.
Hey, Mason here. Before I start, I just want to thank everyone for all the support on the videos. Originally, I started making videos mainly just to document my own builds and my own kind of decisions. And it was mostly so that I could watch my own videos back in the future, in case I ever needed to remake the build or if I wanted to play the build again from scratch. But yeah, lots of people have been really enjoying the videos, so I really appreciate the support. And I'm going to continue to just make videos on builds, kind of talking about my decisions. So this is going to be the final video for Flicker Strike Invoker. The reason why is because they nerfed all the boss HP for the Ubers. So the highest HP boss in the game now, for single player, like one person, is Uber Arbiter with 22 million HP. And then the rest of the other bosses, the mechanic bosses, such as Xesht, Olroth, and King of the Mist, have been nerfed down to, I think it's 13 million HP. So with that in mind, the build can basically one-shot all these bosses without any big issues at all. So I'm kind of done with the progression. There's not really any point for me to push it, because it's already beating everything in the game. I just wanted to first show off my Pilfering Ring. This shows how much currency I've made this league. Basically not much at all. I've dropped 6 Raw Divines, I've dropped 2 Perfect Jewelers, 316 Exalts, and 68 Chaos. So I've literally dropped nothing. In terms of those really expensive builds out there, this is not an expensive build. However, you do need to know how to craft and pick up your own gear off the floor and kind of have attempts at crafting. But yeah, this wraps it up for the character. If you've watched the previous video, there's actually basically no changes. To give you a really quick TLDR, if you've seen all the previous videos and you've been following, the key change is 1, Charge Staff has Culling Strike, and then I'm using Trinity support, and I'm using an extra Mana Flask here, which I will talk about in some tech when I go over the skill gems. But if you've seen all the previous videos and you want to know how do I get to the level where my character is in those showcases that I showed before, that's literally it. It's this Mana Flask here, it's Trinity, and it's Culling Strike support. The reason why we're going with Trinity is because they nerfed that beast that I used before. It doesn't give you haste anymore, so there's no point of running it. But yeah, I'm going to go over kind of some of the reasoning and I guess a bit more of an overall overview on Flicker Strike in 0.3. So in the previous patch, okay, I'll start with how Flicker Strike actually works. Flicker Strike consumes power charges, hits multiple times per power charge, but it has a very strange behavior, which it's just called snapshotting, where it will take all the buffs on your character at the first Flicker Strike, and all those buffs will apply to every single Flicker Strike after. So the key example that I normally give when I talk about this is critting. If you crit on the first flicker, you will crit on every single hit after that. If you don't crit on the first one, you will not crit on every single hit after that. So that applies to a lot of stuff. Some people have asked me, why am I using Infernal Cry in this build? And that's this is the reason why I'm using Infernal Cry, because it says empowers 1 attack, and empower attacks gain 46% of damage as extra fire. So when I War Cry, and I gain this buff, and then when I Flicker Strike, the first hit will gain the extra damage, sorry, the 46% damage as extra fire, but every single other hit after will also have that buff. So you're buffing your entire Flicker Strike by, in this case, it will be getting the 46% as fire, so you could say 46% damage, and that's kind of the reason why Infernal Cry is in this build, and that's kind of a fundamental kind of function of how Flicker Strike is working in POE2. This can be exploited, not really exploited, but you can use game mechanics to kind of empower your flicker in order to push boss DPS, and I'll talk a little bit about that once I get into the gems, which will just be now. I'll just go to the gems right away. So in our case, because I'm playing Meditate, the only change I've made, you got Rapid Casting to make it cast faster, you got cooldown recovery so it comes back more often, and you got Steadfast. The supports in here basically more or less don't matter, except Rapid Casting is nice to have, and cooldown recovery is nice to have. Everything else is just whatever. You can literally put nothing in here, you can literally put whatever you want. Meditate's mainly used on this build to obviously regen your ES, because there's no other reliable sources of ES regen unless you use certain gear. So it's a very efficient way to have a very large hit pool, because you're also increasing your hit pool by 1.5x. And so that's kind of why I've picked Invoker and why I'm going Meditate. Flicker Strike is the main skill, obviously. My Flicker Strike is level 10. It's a level 19 gem with plus 10 from global modifiers. That is plus 5 from my quarterstaff, plus 2 from my gloves, and plus 3 from my amulet. Flicker Strike is supported by Pinpoint Critical, Close Combat, Perpetual Charge, Hit and Run, Ancestral Core. This is the mapping setup. Pinpoint Critical is required because, as I mentioned before with the way Flicker Strike snapshots, if your first hit crits, every other hit crits. So you want to have your crit chance to be 100%. If you don't, you will have Flicker Strikes where you click it and you miss the crit chance and you literally hit like a wet noodle. You don't do any damage. Because with Invoker and stacking crit, you're doing 400% crit damage, which is basically you're timesing your damage by 5 if you crit. That's why Pinpoint is put in here. And by putting in Pinpoint, you do lower your crit damage to, I think it's like 300 and something, 300, but you're still doing 4 times more damage if you didn't crit. So if you crit, then if you didn't crit. Next one is Close Combat. It's a pretty self-explanatory gem. It's just 30% more damage. Next one is Perpetual Charge. Perpetual Charge got nerfed this league. Previous league, it used to be 35% chance to not remove a charge. This league, it's 25% chance to not remove a charge. There is a reason why in my boss swap, I actually take out this gem, because it's actually not that effective for giving you extra damage. The reason why, so if you look at this gem initially, you might be like, oh, that's 25% more hits with Flicker Strike, which would be 25% more damage. But because of the new node on the passive tree, right here, this one gives me 11, but it's baseline 10%. So you have 10% already, you're getting 25%, going up to 35%. But it means that you're actually increasing your damage by a tiny bit less than 25% mathematically. That's why it's the first gem to come out when I do the boss swap. The next gem here is Hit and Run. Hit and Run gives you more skill speed, but you have to move 10 meters to use the skill. When you Flicker Strike, you basically have this up permanently. It's not really a downside. Otherwise, you just roll a few times and you will have it up. But the main part is it gives you the more skill speed. A lot of people have talked about dying with Flicker Strike. When they're trying to flicker, they get cancelled, they get stunned out of it, normally by ranged mobs. Hit and Run is a pretty important thing to make your Flicker Strike start faster, and also the entire thing will go faster as well. And it's kind of used to avoid having big risks when you're using your Flicker Strike and then you get cancelled out of it. Because Flicker Strike has a 50% lower attack speed kind of modifier on the first hit, like when you're about to hit the first one. And then as soon as you hit it once, you have the 285% more attack speed for all your other Flicker Strikes. The last gem is something that was added this league. The way Ancestral Call works, basically you boost your strike skill, which is Flicker Strike is a strike skill. It says here that boosted strikes will target 2 additional enemies. So when you flicker to one mob, the mobs around it will have a clone hitting them, and this will basically continue. The reason why this is needed in this patch is because they nerfed Herald of Thunder's AoE. So in the previous patch, Herald of Thunder had a 1.4 meter bolt impact radius. They nerfed that to 1.1, which is like more than a 30% nerf because it's radius. So it makes your clear much worse without it. Like you basically, when I say clear, you will flicker and jump to every single mob individually, and it's just not very efficient, right? Because you want to hop from pack to pack to go around the map really fast. That's why Ancestral Core is in here. When you hop to a pack, the additional clones will strike enemies in the pack. Your Herald of Thunder will proc off or hit yourself and your 2 clones, and the bolts will generally cover the entire pack, and you'll wipe the pack and you'll hop to the next one. Or you'll wipe like whatever mobs are nearby and hop on, and basically increasing your speed of clear. That's why Ancestral Core is put into the last link, but this does not give you any single target damage at all because the clones cannot strike the same target, and it's not mentioned in here as well. This allows you to resolve the nerf to Herald of Thunder in terms of the AoE on Herald of Thunder, and it's relatively important in this setup. So that's kind of covering the clear gems, like the mapping gems and the general use, like when you're mapping. But when you want to push bosses, like Uber bosses, we're swapping in a few different gems. So the first one we're swapping in is a new gem called Garakan's Resolve. This gem basically forks your crit chance. It's the same text on Tinkle Tongue, I've mentioned it before. If you read what the text does, it rolls your crits twice if the first one is successful. So if either is successful, it says here, the hit will be a crit and you'll get your crit damage bonus. If both are successful, the hit will be a crit and the crit damage bonus will be applied twice. Basically, because we have 100% crit chance, you see here, we're basically getting double our crit damage on every single hit, which means instead of doing 300% more, which is 4 times damage, you'll be doing 600% like crit damage, which will be 7 times damage of your normal hit. So it's not exactly doubling your damage, but I believe mathematically it's like 70 to 80% more damage support. So you see this one's 30% more damage, this is 70 to 80% on Flicker Strike for this case, if you have 100% crit. And similar crit damage numbers to me. The next one is Momentum. This support means that you need to move at least 2 meters, and the rest of the skill will do 40% more damage. Because of the snapshotting effect that I discussed with Flicker Strike before, you can't stand next to the boss and Flicker Strike them, and then as you dash around a little bit around them, you get this bonus. You need to make sure that you're far enough from the boss before you Flicker Strike, so when you jump to them, you travel 2 meters to get to them, and then your entire Flicker Strike will get 40% more damage. I have not actually tested this in this patch, but in the previous patch, I did test it, and I believe it worked as it was written on the gem. And in the previous patch, so in 1.0, a YouTuber Flicker player called Ten's Frenzy Flicker also tested this, and I remember he told me that that's how it works. That's why it's normally used in Flicker Strike. So basically, imagine if this is the boss, Tujin is the boss. Normally, you'll see me rolling back, and that's to gain distance for momentum, so that when I flicker to them, I get the 40% more damage for the entire Flicker Strike. The last one is Ambrosia. So I talked about this briefly in the previous video, but basically, you consume your Mana Flask charges and you gain 3% of damage as extra lightning damage per charge consumed. In my normal Mana Flask, I have 119 charges. 20% of 119 is let's just say it's 25, it's close enough. And so basically 25 times 3 is 75% damage as extra lightning. So basically you're getting between 20 to 25 charges, and you're getting between 60 to 75% damage as extra lightning. That's basically how much it sounds like. You're not getting exactly that much damage because you have sources of extra lightning from your tree, for example, so from your Ascendancy right here. But you're basically getting like 50% more damage support with this gem here. And that's with 1 Mana Flask. So I'll talk about some tech with the second Mana Flask. I did end up testing this, and I will see if I can show it right now, actually. Let me just pull up my testing. Give me 1 second. Okay, so I think it was this one. Oh, that was the other video here. This one here. So I did end up testing this, and we'll see this in a second here. So right now, I'm just gonna wait for my character. My character will hit the boss with his basic quarterstaff attack. And let me just check if I just take a quick look through this. So we got. Okay, let me just. Okay, here we go. So this here, I have Ambrosia in here. I've capped my crit with an inevitable critical and pinpoint crit. And so when I hit the boss, it did 64,000 damage. I'm not sure how clear that is. But after that, I take off the flask that was red. So this was the red flask. Like, you can't actually use it. And I hit the boss again in a second once his ES is full and my inevitable critical has stacked up to max to make sure I crit. And it did 41,000 damage. Obviously, I did test this a few times, but remember that this is one test case. So it's not like end or be or. It's one test case. And so keep that in mind that it may be wrong, but I'm fairly confident it works with this current bug. And there's no reason for you to actually not use this until it gets patched, obviously. So how do you actually do this? There's this belt called Wastegate Heavy Belt. It allows you to equip the same flask in both slots. What you do, because normally you can't put a flask here, right? I'm clicking, doesn't work. I put on this, I take this off and put on my normal belt, store this off somewhere, and I click well, and it fills up both my Mana Flasks. This is kind of the tech with Ambrosia. So before I was saying Ambrosia is like 50% more damage, so 60 to 75% extra lightning. With 2 flasks, you're adding that on again. So it's like 120% extra lightning, or 100 to like 150, right? So you're getting a ton more damage from this gem with this tech with the double Mana Flask. And you actually don't need this life flask. Normally it's a life flask, you don't need this because you're playing Meditate. So you have on-demand ES regen whenever you want. So you don't really need this. And they also did nerf Eternal Youth, which was the other ES sustain node. So you can't use Eternal Youth anymore, so your flask slot is basically free. So you might as well put in 2 flasks to get the most out of Ambrosia for your bossing. That kind of covers it for the main skill Flicker Strike. So I'll swap my gems back to mapping. But I'll just go over the next kind of few gems, like just quickly. So Herald of Thunder, Ambush, so you crit. Make sure that your crit chance here is more than 50% because Ambush will give you 100% more, which is doubling. So this will mean that on full health enemies, my Herald of Thunder will always crit. Magnified effect to increase the AoE a little bit. This is more damage. This is more damage. It says here that supported skills cannot inflict elemental ailments. But in case it says on here, it says right here, Herald of Thunder can't shock. That's been changed. It can't shock anymore. So it's just more damage. And the last one is Long Shot. This means that when your clones hit and they proc Herald of Thunder, because they're a little bit far away from you, they're not like right next to you, right? They're a little bit further away, you will get the extra damage, and it kind of helps clean up the edge of the pack, if that makes sense. But in reality, it's just more damage here. You can also use Close Combat if you want to use that. I don't really know how much it makes a difference because you're basically destroying everything in the pack anyways. So it's like kind of iffy. You can kind of put whatever you want. But Long Shot's generally what's put on Herald of Thunder. The next one is Charge Staff. Charge Staff is supported by Innovate, Shock, Prolonged Duration, Shock Conduction, and Culling Strike. I want to talk a little bit about Innovate. In the previous patch, this used to be in your Herald of Thunder, and this will give you permanent uptime on Innovate. Because you can't put this in here anymore, you see I can't click on the gems to put them in and swap them, you have to put it on the next best option, which is Charge Staff, but Charge Staff's uptime of Innovate is quite poor. I'll probably say it's like 10 to 20% uptime, so it's like not really that efficient, and Innovate is also put into my Stormwave as my, because I'm killing stuff with my Stormwave. The next thing here is Shock and Shock Conduction. This just means that you will, if your Charge Staff will shock, it will generally shock the entire pack because you also have this node right here that creates Shocked Ground. So 25% chance to create Shocked Ground upon shocking an enemy. So generally, your Charge Staff will shock enemies. and this will allow you to get your Herald Thunder, because Herald Thunder requires you to kill a shocked enemy. The last one is Culling Strike. It's just for bossing. You can also put Blind in here if you want, but it doesn't really matter what you put in here. And you can just keep it a 5-link if you want as well. That's also not a big deal. The next one is Reaper's Invocation. So normally, Flicker Strike builds will use Cast on Crit. I've decided this league to go with Reaper's Invocation instead because I felt like the uptime on this was much better, and the power charge generation it gave was way more consistent and way more often. I mentioned this in my previous videos as well. You press it, it casts Profane Ritual 5 times based on the energy inside. You get like 5 to 7 charges, and you can flicker again immediately. Charge Profusion so that you gain more charges. This one's so that the charges come to you quicker because Profane Ritual has to complete the ritual, which takes some time. And Overabundance, please use Overabundance level 1. The reason why we're using level 1 here is because it actually has a worse debuff. Like the less skill effect duration is higher, which means that your Profane Ritual will finish quicker, and then it will come to you and you give you your power charge even faster. So don't use Overabundance 2 here. Use Overabundance 1. Next one here is the actual Profane Ritual itself. Profane Ritual, you see here, it's used in my second weapon set. I have this ticked here, not in my first weapon set. And it's with Unleash, so that it stacks up to 3 times. Overabundance, level 1 again, reminder to level 1, so that it comes to me quicker. The ritual completes quicker. If I just show you right here. So you cast a ritual and they come to me. That comes quicker. This one so that it's nicer to cast because it casts faster, and this one so that it gives me more charges. You use this on bosses because Repeat Invocation requires you to kill mobs to gain energy for it. So this is mainly a bossing tool. Before the boss, you will get up your power charges, then you will charge staff, then you will get up your power charges again, and then you will go again, and you would Flicker Strike on the boss. One thing I just want to point out while we're talking about this, your skeletons, they will spawn whenever you swap weapon sets, right? No delay. However, if there is an enemy near you, sometimes you will swap, there will be no skeletons next to you, you have a timer here. Generally for bossing, this involves you walking away from the boss. If Trial Master is a boss, I might like walk over here, and when I swap, my skeletons will spawn, and I'll sacrifice them as I walk in again. But just keep that in mind, that if your skeletons are not spawning when you're swapping weapons, it's because you're too close to mobs around you, or there's mobs nearby. The next one here is Infernal Cry. Talked about that one before, how it snapshots with Flicker Strike. You use cooldown, you use Rage. You can also use Second Wind here to allow you to Warcry twice, which would allow you to stack your Rage to max. But I don't think it's really necessary. Up to you. Last one here is your kind of main damage skill outside of Flicker Strike. Using Stormwave with the new Branching Fissures. The reason why we're using the new one, so you see the little lines that come out of my Stormwave? Let me see if I can show this a bit better. There's 2 lines that come out of the Stormwave, and they have their own AoEs, and if the boss is like nicely in between all the lines, he will end up taking the first line's damage, the second line's damage, and the third line's damage. So you can kind of shotgun on the boss. And that's why we are now using Branching Fissures instead of Upheaval, which was the old support gem in this slot. Next one we're using is Rage 3 for the 50% more attack speed when you're not at max Rage, Elemental Armament for more damage, and Innovate here is your primary method for keeping, Innovate in here is mostly kept like 80 to 90% uptime. What I generally recommend is you will kill one mob with your Stormwave before you Flicker Strike, because that will kill a shocked mob, which will give you Innovate, which would make you just deal more damage. Generally, you may need it, you may not need it depending on your gear, but it's something to keep in mind after every Flicker Strike if you can, if the mobs aren't too close to you. Just hit them with a Stormwave, kill one mob, and then just go Flicker Strike again. So you kill a mob and then immediately just Flicker Strike, because generally your Stormwave will kill whatever it hits. The next one is Sacrifice. In 0.3, they nerfed Sacrifice to not be allocatable on individual weapon sets, which means that now you have to pay 60 Spirit in both weapon sets in order to use this aura. You need this because it allows you to sacrifice your reviving minions, so your skeletons, with Profane Ritual, which gives you your power charges on bosses. If you do not have this, you can't sacrifice your skeletons, and you just can't get power charges for bosses, and you just can't use Flicker Strike on the bosses. Finally, the last one is Trinity. Trinity is something I just added in because it's just free damage, but generally you will only be able to keep one elemental like elemental type up, which means that you would generally only get like 15% more damage because it's per 30 of each type. You can have 100 in total, so in that case that would be 90 divided by 3, which would be 5 times 3 amount more damage, which is 15% more damage. If your quarterstaff is rainbow colored like mine, so it has like cold, fire, and just random elements on it, you may have 2. But I wouldn't really rely on min-maxing your quarterstaff to have Trinity have 2 buffs, because generally your Trinity won't even be stacked when you're using your Flicker Strike on the boss, because you're only Storm Waving to shock the boss before you Flicker Strike. So you shock the boss, Infernal Cry, Flicker Strike. So generally Trinity is kind of just like it's a flexible aura slot. If you don't want to use Trinity, you're free to use whatever other aura you want to use. In my case, a few recommendations. I'm just going to open up the aura page. You can use Charge Regulation if you want. That's what I was using before. You can use Elemental Conflux. However, it needs a lot of int, and I personally don't really think it's worth the int. You could use Berserk, but I would not recommend using that with CI because it's a bug and you will randomly die. You could also use Wind Dancer. If you want more evasion, you can use Ghost Dance. However, I don't think your evasion is high enough with the gear setup I have, so I wouldn't recommend it. You can use Herald of Ash, high strength requirement, but just use a lower level gem. But personally, I think that the Trinity damage is just worth it because it applies to everything, including your Herald Thunder, your clones, everything you're Flicker Striking, your Stormwave, etc. So generally, I think it's a good support, a good aura to have if you have a lot of spirit like me. Again, if you don't have the spirit, use Charge Regulation, which is 30 spirit, or if you don't like Charge Regulation, feel free to use Herald of Ash, feel free to use Wind Dancer, Ghost Dance, Mana Remnants, like literally whatever you want. Just kind of look at the auras and decide what you want based on what your preference is. It's not really a locked-in slot here. However, Trinity is better for bossing because you will have it up, and I have a lot of spirit, so I might as well use all of it, otherwise it's being wasted. Okay, that covers it for the gems. The next thing I want to talk about is the gear. So if we take a look at my quarterstaff here, I'm just going to open my overlay as well so you can kind of see the damage numbers as well. My quarterstaff here has 554 total DPS with 122 as physical and 431 as elemental DPS. You can see these on the POE website, by the way. If you actually go on the trade site, it actually will tell you physical DPS, DPS, and elemental DPS on it. You can also search by them as well. So let me show you that quickly. Right here, this one here is total DPS. This one here is physical DPS. This one here is elemental DPS. So it's like the same things that are showing on my overlay. There's kind of 2 ways you can pick a quarterstaff for Flicker Strike. So first to start is that 1, Flicker Strike does not have any conversion of damage. So you see here, it just does this much damage and there's no other special text on it. For example, if I look at Stormwave, it says 80% fizz to lightning. So you're mostly dealing lightning damage with this. But Flicker Strike will do equal portions of damage based on whatever's on your quarterstaff. In my case, you see here I've got some fire, some cold, some lightning, some physical. So if you look at my Flicker Strike damage, you can see here it does some physical, it does some fire, it does some cold, it does some lightning. You see the lightning and cold is pretty similar. That's because the range of lightning and cold, 150, 100, is pretty similar as well. Lightning damage is a bit higher, probably due to the scaling on my tree. But generally that's how Flicker Strike damage is derived. It's from your quarterstaff based on the flat damage on your quarterstaff. If I show you another quarterstaff, let me just see if I can find one. I think I had a spare one somewhere. We'll just take this off and I'll show you this quarterstaff here. Just random quarterstaff from my stash. It has only physical damage. Based on what I just explained, we can now guess that that Flicker Strike will only do physical damage. You see, physical is the most of it, but it's also doing a bit of cold and a bit of lightning, and that's because I have cold and lightning, and I have cold and lightning on my rings. If I take both my rings off, you see here, does like a really small amount of lightning and a really small amount of cold. It's probably due to some random. This one has a tiny bit of cold on it. Let me see if I take this off. See, there's a little bit of lightning damage. I'm not sure where it's from, but I think that generally explains my point. So Flicker Strike has no damage conversion. It does what your quarterstaff says. So here's where the kind of 2 main ways you can pick a quarterstaff for Flicker Strike. 1, you pick an elemental damage quarterstaff so that you deal mostly elemental damage with your Flicker Strike because you're playing Invoker and you have a node here that says crits ignore elemental damage weaknesses. Sorry, crits ignore elemental res. Your Flicker Strike is 100% crit, which means every hit will ignore. And so that's kind of how you're getting the best of your scaling here. That's one way of doing this. The second way is what I have. The second way is a pure fizz quarterstaff. Generally, let me see. I'll log onto my old character and I'll show you my setup on my old character that used the pure fizz quarterstaff. So this was from SSF last league. Because in SSF, you can't just like, oh, I want a elemental quarterstaff. You can't just get one, right? My quarterstaff here is purely fizz with a very, very small amount of lightning you see here. So you can see here, like mostly fizz and tiny bit of lightning. If I open the overlay, you see here that it's 477 physical and like 32 elemental damage. Basically no elemental damage. And it's just from this tiny tier 8 lightning roll. If you're using a pure fizz quarterstaff, you may have issues with shocking the mobs. Because, again, you need to shock the mob. So if I just don't mind these links, this is my old character. If you want to shock the mobs in order to proc Herald of Thunder, which is your primary source of clear on this build, I think this is bugged. Okay, you can't put it back in. Okay, but yeah, basically you need to shock the enemy to kill them. If you can't shock the enemy, then there is one solution, and that is using Lightning Attunement in your main link. Because most of my damage is physical, I don't actually lose much damage by putting in Lightning Attunement. So if you look here, I have 4,600 top physical damage and 600 top fire and like 2,000 top lightning. If I put Lightning Infusion in, it goes up to 4,000, 4,000. I gain like not much, but I basically don't lose much either. And the reason why my lightning is so high is because I have lightning flat on my rings, and I think I might have it on my gloves. No, just physical. But that's kind of why my lightning flat is high. I have one on here, like one mod, and one mod over here. So if you're using a pure fizz quarterstaff and you are struggling with clear, put Lightning Attunement into your Flicker Strike links, because that will allow you to shock the enemy and kill them with Herald of Thunder, and that will solve your clear. So generally, just check, make sure and take a look and see, am I shocking and am I killing mobs with Herald of Thunder? Easiest way to see that is to look at the Herald of Thunder icon here and check the number. It will count down, this one right here, it will be like a 5 underneath it, which is 5 bolts, and it will count down to 1 every time you hit a mob and it procs. And if you see that it's disappearing, or it's there's no number next to it, that likely means you're not killing shocked enemies, which means you likely need some lightning damage somewhere. And just following up onto this, that's why I'm taking this note here. This helps give you extra lightning damage. It also helps with shocking. And if you are also struggling, you can take this node right here and this node right here to give you increased chance to shock and the extra damage, extra lightning damage. That's generally how you would solve this. If you were to remove a support for it, I'd recommend you take out close combat for the mapping setup. And then for the bossing setup, you'll probably, you don't need Lightning Attunement, right? Because on bossing, you don't need to kill mobs to get Herald of Thunder. You're just killing the boss. So there's no need for Herald of Thunder. So that's kind of the idea. The reason why you wouldn't put Lightning Attunement in here if you are bossing is because it actually lowers the amount of extra damage you gain from stuff like your rings. Because like my ring is giving me a lot of flat of different elemental types, and Lightning Attunement reduces them. So just keep that in mind when you're doing that. That's kind of the two setups. Look for what's cheap. The main important thing on a quarterstaff is this crit line right here. You need this crit line. Otherwise, it will be very difficult to cap your crit. And instead of using this crit line to search, I recommend you use this crit hit chance line here and put 13 or higher. On the trade market in game, that would be right here. This node right here, you'd put 13, you'd put quarterstaff, search, and then you probably go like sort by DPS, and then put a price filter, because obviously you don't want to pay too much. Let's just put a divine. Let's just put like 5 divines, and then we're going to resort by DPS, and you can kind of look through here. So 5 divine, 4 divine. You see this one? This one has 700 DPS. Remember, my one has like 550, so it's like better than mine already. However, it doesn't have melee skill gems, so you can always just go like attack gem, attack skills, level. This one right here. This is a new essence. And then when you sort by DPS, 600 DPS, has +6, and it has the crit. Good to go. 4 divines. Stuff like that. This one here, pure fizz, remember? Mostly physical, some elemental, so you will have to use Lightning Attunement if you are not shocking. But if you scroll down a bit more. If I, for example, sort by elemental DPS, you see here this one has 500 DPS, it has mostly elemental. It has good enough lightning, which means that you'll probably be fine with shocking with this quarterstaff. So it's not really a big deal at all. So you won't need to put Lightning Attunement in. And generally, it is better to not need to put it in. For example, this one here for 1 divine is really cheap. It listed 1 minute ago, it's going to get sniped immediately by the time this finishes. But basically, that's how you kind of look up a quarterstaff you want. Before you get a quarterstaff, you can play Hollow Palm. I have videos on that, so go check them out. The next piece of gear is your helmet. Res high energy shield. That's it. Like, you don't really care about anything else. You can go for crit chance on your helmet. It's expensive. I just went cheap. High ES is because high ES is important because obviously you're playing CI. You want to have a big hit pool. But it's also important because this node right here on the tree, you gain 2 evasion per 1 ES on your equipped helmet. So if you look at my character has 5,600 evasion and 30%, which is 30% dodge chance. If I take off my helm, it drops to 19%. So putting this thing on gives me like 10% dodge chance. And it gives me a ton of evasion, like 1,000 plus evasion, because of the way this node right here works. So in terms of gear, your helmet slot is pretty important, and you want to make sure that it has a high ES. The next one to talk about is your body armor. Your body armor is probably either your most important or your second most important next to your quarterstaff or your helm. The reason why it's very, very important is because you're using this node right here, which gives you spirit based on the stats on your body armor, and you can't gain spirit from other armor. So my amulet has no spirit and my body armor has no spirit. All my body armor has is a very, very high evasion roll and a very, very high ES roll. And I have 1 res on it, and the rest of them are terrible. And this crit damage bonus one, you can just ignore this. This was just a free line because the new essence they added. It's also corrupted because I vow all my items for fun. But keep that in mind. So with this much evasion and energy shield, I have enough to use Trinity. But if you can't get a body armor this good, just use the other auras I talked about earlier. So for context, let's see how much this is. It says it's 8 divines, but if you take off the gold res, it is still 8 divines. And then if you lower this a bit, so say you go like 1,000, go 450, take off the corruption, 4 divines. So that's kind of how much my body armor is. Or you can just craft this yourself, which I'll talk about a bit in the filter. Next one here is your amulet. The key line here is the melee skill gems +3, its damage. Because of the new essence, there's a new essence that gives you global defenses, so that's also very nice to have. The way you craft this is you pick an amulet that has melee 3 and maybe 2 other relevant suffixes, or you can desecrate one of them like I have here. So 1 relevant suffix. If you have 2 suffixes, then you want to use the desecrate, the jewelry desecrate with the suffix omen, this one right here, and then it will force it onto a suffix so you can try and fish for a resistance. And then once you have that, exalt out your prefixes with whatever you want and use the new omen. Sorry, not the new omen, the new essence. Let me see if I can find the name for it. Just type in global defenses. This one right here. Use this on the amulet with 3 bad prefixes, just whatever the prefixes are. Because increased global defenses is a prefix, so this mod right here is a prefix. Item, this one right here is a prefix. It will forcibly remove a prefix, and I just said that you exalted them randomly, so they're all bad probably. And then it'll put on this to give you a bit more ES. It's just nice to get a bit more ES, and it's relatively cheap to make. Next one is your rings. Rings are generally very standard for attack builds. You just want flat damage, so cold damage, lightning damage, res, and that's really it. Same for this one, cold damage and lightning damage. This one has int, res, and I have this mana on kill, but you don't need this because you have leech. Another line that you can get on your rings is this line here that says leeches physical damage as mana. You will need 1 source of this somewhere on your gear, and the 3 pieces are rings, gloves, or ring. Like you only have those 2 slots. The reason why you want this is because you're using this new notable right here, which says mana leech is based on elemental damage types instead of fizz. So if you have 1 of these mods, you will be able to leech mana and you won't have any mana issues. If you do not have any leech on your gear, you will have mana issues. And stuff like, you can use stuff like recover 2 mana on kill. You can use a jewel that recovers 2 mana on kill. You can use this ring mod that recovers 2 to 3 mana on kill. They will help, but it's much, much easier for you to get leech fizz as mana and just click this node right here. The next one to talk about is the gloves. The gloves, generally, you only really care about 2 things. 1 is level of melee skills. 2 is high ES. That's kind of the budget version. If you want to use an expensive version, Milky KB has a crafting one that uses the increased socketed effect essence, and then +2 melee skills and a bunch of stuff. But personally, I like to keep my gear a bit more on the bad side, and it's mostly all just gear I pick up off the ground and craft myself. So in my case, I have melee skill gems, I have a res, I have like basically 0 cold, like basically no flat, but I have some ES to make sure that it gives me some energy shield, just to help with my tankiness. So it gives me like 400, 500 ES just from this 200, this 100 energy base energy shield right here. Next thing is your belt. Your belt is literally just resistances and maybe attributes if you need that, and make sure you have 2 charm slots. It's pretty important to get 3 charm slots on this build because you run an ignite charm to help with meditate, but like the rest of these lines don't really matter, and you can easily run the Darkness Enthroned new belt, or you can run an Ingenuity if you want. So it's a very flexible slot here. The last one is your boots. Boots are generally also very standard in this game. Movement speed 30%, like 20% plus you want high energy shield, you want res. In my case, I have 1 res, I have rarity, and I have ES recharge. Doesn't matter about the rarity and the ES recharge. You just want res, you want high ES, you want movement speed. That's it. And for your 3 charms, Stone Charm so you don't get stunned, Freeze Charm so you don't get frozen, Ignite Charm so you don't get ignited. The reason why, again, it's important to not be ignited is because you're running Meditate right here, which forces your ES to start. But if you're ignited, you can't meditate. So you can't force your ES to start if you're being ignited, which means you can't regen your ES when you need it. So just keep that in mind. Make sure you have an Ignite Charm here. That more or less covers it for the gear. In the weapon swap, so if I press my weapon swap key, just let me roll out of here. I have this wand right here, which is not needed. You do not need this. You can literally play with no wand. It doesn't actually matter. But I have this wand in here, and I also have a rattling scepter. The reason why it's rattling is because this one allows you to summon the little skeleton warriors. These are the guys that get eaten by the profane ritual to give you power charges. So that's kind of all that matters. Every single mod on this item, except the increased spirit one, more or less does not matter. Increased spirit helps so that you can have like a bit more skeletons. I have 8, so I can like spam my profane ritual. But if I, for example, had less, if I had like 3, all I would do is I'll press Profane Ritual, then I swap weapons, and I press Profane Ritual, and I swap weapons, and I press Profane Ritual, and I swap weapons. It's the same thing. But yeah, the more you have, the better. It's not needed, and do not pay like expensive money. Literally 1 Exalt item, 2 Exalt item. Do not waste your money on this. It's not needed to be good. Also, the level does not matter either, because the Skeleton Warrior's only purpose is to get eaten by Profane Ritual, and their level does not affect your power charge generation at all. One thing I did want to talk about is weapon swap. So on my first weapon set, you can see all my auras are turned on, but I'll go through them one by one. Herald of Thunder is off in the second aura. When I weapon swap now, it's off. Reaper's Invocation is on. You need to make sure it's on for both, otherwise you will lose your energy when you swap weapons, which is annoying. So keep this on for both. Next one is Sacrifice. This needs to be on for both because it's now a mandatory requirement for this gem. So you need to keep it on for both. Last one is Trinity. Trinity is off for the second weapon set because why would I turn it on? It's not doing anything, right? So in your second weapon set, you have Sacrifice, you have Reaper's Invocation, and you have as many skeletons as you can fit with your spirit on your gear. In your first weapon set, you have everything else. Herald of Thunder, Reapers, Sacrifice, Trinity. Basically all the other auras you can fit. But yeah, that covers it for the gear. I'm going to talk a little bit about the skill tree. So we are grabbing these ES nodes over here because they're very close and efficient because there's a crit node right here. But the main thing here is you're mainly using a skill tree to cap your crit with pinpoint. So for example, these crit nodes here, there's 1 extra I'm taking here to cap my crit. There's like this small wheel here and there's this small wheel here. For anoints, I've anointed crit damage, so it's actually not giving me crit. However, if you're struggling for crit chance, you can anoint this one right here. If you want some other options, there's one over here that's like pretty cheap. I think that's like the one off the top of my head that I can think of. But there's a few around that you can generally pick. But yeah, so generally, very straightforward skill tree. Subterfuge Mask, because it's really strong. Spectral Ward, because it's very, very good. Like efficient, you're getting stats from already beyond the stats you want. You want the 3 power charge wheels right here. We're taking this node right here because I'm always on full life because I'm playing Chaos Inoculation, which is this one right here. So I'm always on full life. And we're pathing up to take these 3 nodes here to help with stun threshold. It's very important because with CI you will get randomly stunned if you don't have these. Crit nodes, quarterstaff node for power charges. And it allows you to basically have a bit more flickers than before. And these nodes here. So this one here is for Leech. This one here is the same line on Perpetual Charge. It makes you flicker strike more. And the frenzy charge duration stuff helps with if you're using charge regulation. It helps keep uptime on it. But it's efficient because it's right next to here. It's only 4 points, and it is more for damage as well. The next one here is these crit nodes here. You want all of these, and I will just talk a little bit about jewels now. So generally, if you're budget, just get yourself a jewel like this. 2 relevant lines, 3 relevant lines, however much you can afford. You can just plug them in. If you want to kind of be fancy, I'm using this fancy jewel here. It gives me leeches, instant, and damage. Lightning damage with hits is lucky. However, it's not needed. Just go grab one of these random jewels that are good for your build, like relevant lines, attack damage, quarterstaff, whatever. Attack speed generally is not really valued as much because you get a lot from Flicker Strike. So you get 285% more. So you may look at getting like crit damage, crit chance, increased damage, generally better. Over here is the jewel tech that I've been using every time I play Flicker Strike. It's the specific mod that says increased effect of notable passive skills in radius. This will boost the effect of the notables, the big nodes. So this one here says 11% instead of 10%, right? Over here we have 15% increased crit, 25% increased crit, 1% flat crit chance. It's basically like this flat mod on your quarterstaff. That's what this node here does. The reason why the notables increased effect node is really relevant is because it actually increases the flat crit chance from this node here. So if you get this really high, you get a bit more flat crit chance, which is generally a very hard stat to get, and it helps boost your crit chance a lot. The rest of these nodes all getting boosted as well. And I also have the increased melee damage, so I'm boosting all these tiny nodes here as well. The line that says increased effect of small passive skills, it's not needed. It's kind of just like a min-maxy thing that I did because I crafted this myself. But you do not need this second line here because it's a very expensive combo. Just look for the first one here. And the easiest way to do this is to just go Sanctum until you get a red jewel with this. Sorry, I'm not sure if it's only red, but just get a jewel with this. Fracture it, and you're good to go with spamming Chaos until you hit the second relevant line. In my case, I hit melee damage. And then I used a Desecrate jewel with suffix desecration only. So this omen right here. This one right here, suffixes only. And that allowed it to hit the last suffix, which was not relevant, and I managed to click it into something that was relevant. So that's kind of how you make those jewels if you did want to use one of those. The next part of the passive tree is the weapon swap. It's pretty straightforward. You're just grabbing minion revive time. So revive time here, revive time here, revive time here. You're grabbing these 2 new revive time nodes here. You're grabbing this one right here, revive speed. And then this is for cast speed to help with my profane ritual. Helps a little bit. Increase cast speed when on full life. I'm always on full life because of chaos inoculation. And over here is just faster ES recharge rate, which actually helps with meditate. So I can't really show it because I'm already at full meditation, like full ES. But normally what I do when I enter a map is I'll profane ritual once to get my charge stuff, and then I'll profane ritual twice, and then I'll press meditate while the charges are coming to me, and then I'm generally good to go after that, and I'll have full ES from meditate, and that's why these nodes are actually relevant, because I'm sometimes using my meditation while waiting for charges to come to me. But that's it. That kind of covers the skill tree. The ascendancy nodes I'll talk about briefly as well. This is for spirit on your chest. You want big spirit. This is for meditate. It's your reliable source of ES regen. Make sure you don't get hit because it cancels it. This is so that it's easier for you to shock enemies, which is needed to proc Herald of Thunder, which helps with your clear. And this is just insane damage because it allows you to ignore elemental resistances on mobs. And generally bosses, that's 75%. There is a new gem in the game. It is called... It's called Rakitas. This thing, right? This is a new support gem they added. It inverts the elemental resistances on bosses. So on mobs, sorry. It's also very, very expensive at 20 divines, which is why I'm not using it. I'm trying to keep this budget and SSF friendly. But if you do afford this, it will give you more damage on bosses. Please, please, please make sure you unspec this node right here. Otherwise, you're wasting your money. Unspec this node right here. Go click something else. You can click And I Shall Rage. You can click I'm the Blizzard. You can... I don't recommend you click this one. So one of these two, basically. Generally, you probably click Unbound Avatar and not this one because you don't want to freeze mobs because you can't profane ritual their corpses if they died frozen. So that's if you wanted to push this further. But yeah, I think that covers it for kind of the generic three things: gems, gear, passive tree. I'm going to talk a little bit about actually min-maxing further. So my character, I would say my character is quite bad in terms of the gear it has. For example, the staff here, if I click the crit chance node, it's like 5 divines. This is not 5 divines, by the way. This is probably more like, it's probably like 3 divines. My chest piece is quite good. My helmet is okay. My gloves are pretty bad. These are level 36 gloves, by the way. I dropped these in campaign. I have not swapped off them. My rings, they're decent. They have like tiny bit of flat cold and some flat lightning and reses. And this one also has the same. This one has tier 2, which is nice. Tier 2 lightning, but tier 5 cold, which is bad. And 1 res, int, man on kill. Man on kill doesn't really matter because you have a leech. My belt is terrible. My boots have decent ES, but move speed and a res, but they're not like anything too special. So the gear in general is not very good at all. I'm just going to talk about min-maxing. So there's kind of 2 key things they added this league that can help you if you want to make your flicker strike like absolutely crazy, right? The first thing is these boots here. So this was actually previously. Oh, why are they not being shown up? Let me just reset my clear filters, then reset. So these boots here give you +1 maximum power charge. Flicker strike hits extra times based on how many power charges you have, but it also gives you 12% increased crit damage bonus per power charge. A previous commenter tested this and they mentioned that they believe this works. And the way I understand how this works is when you have all your power charges on you, so before you flicker strike, you have 7 power charges on you, which means that the crit damage from this is being applied to your character. So your character number, like the skill, will have the extra crit damage. So when you press flicker strike, it snapshots your character before it consumes the charges, which means that you get the extra crit damage for the entire flicker strike. That's my understanding of how it works. I have not tested this myself, so please take this with a grain of salt. I was told this by a commenter who's also playing flicker strike, and they also have some videos out there, but just keep that in mind. I have not tested this interaction myself. The main issue with using these boots is one, you lose ES, and I like to be tanky, so I'm not using these boots. And also, you also lose move speed, which is just inconvenient, right? Because you want to have more move speed. The next thing to talk about is a new ring called Grip the Kulemak, I think it's called. This ring here, Grip of Kulemak. This ring can roll multiple different type of mods, but it can roll maximum power charge, which is basically not seen before in POE2. It's the only ring, I think, in the game right now that can give you an extra power charge. And an extra power charge is nuts because, 1, it lets you strike, teleports and strikes 2 additional times per power charge, so 2 more times on your strikes. It gives you crit damage if you're using those boots I showed before, but generally, it's a very, very good ring. The way I recommend you look these up is you go to POEDB. It has an entire page on every single mod that is relevant for this ring. You want power charge and another relevant line. So in my case, I picked power charge and damage as extra lightning and life leash from targets is instant. That's that's the ones I went for. However, you can get power charge, crit damage, crit chance. This ring here is nuts. You can also get power charge, increased magnitude of shock and maximum energy shield. Over here, you can get, I think it's power charge and onslaught when a minion dies. When you kill a minion with your profane ritual, it counts. You can also get int, energy shield, power charge, deflection, power charge. Deflection and power charge. So there's a bunch of interesting mods you can get. I recommend you do your own research and look into POE2 DB with this entry on the wiki and kind of look at what you want and check the prices to make sure that you're not scamming yourself or overpaying for something. So ideally, in an ideal world with a min-maxed flicker strike, you will cap your res without your rings. You'll plonk in 1 ring here, plonk in this ring here. They will both have crit chance, crit damage. It'll be max roll. You will also have ES, which means give you energy shield. Obviously, it's just a dream, right? But that's kind of the idea min-max setup. So with these 2 in, you would get 9 power charges. If you put in the boots, you will get 10 power charges. When you flicker strike, you will hit, I think it's like 30 times or something like that. It'll probably be not that much, but it'll be something ridiculous. And you'll fly across the map and all that stuff. Especially with Ancestral Core clearing everything for you. But yeah, so that kind of really wraps it up, I think, for Flicker Strike this league. The TLDR is, it's been nerfed. They nerfed it, for example, they changed the quality, they nerfed Infernal Cry. They nerfed a few more things, but it's still very, very strong, this league. It's still very fast at clearing, albeit you probably spend more time running to loot because you flicker past all your loot. But it's still a very, very good build. Still very tanky if you play Invoker with CI and Meditate. And it still has some very interesting ways of scaling damage. I just will also mention one more tech in case you are struggling with damage. Sniper's Mark. Let me see if I can pick it up here. Show you what this mark does. It says next crit against marked targets has increased crit damage bonus. It has been tested by a Tense Frenzy Flicker in the previous patch. I think it was either in 0.1 or 0.2. I think it might have been 0.1. But this benefits from Flicker Strike's snapshotting effect, where if your first hit gains the crit damage bonus, every hit other will also gain this crit damage bonus. So if you're struggling for damage, you can also use this. Just take out one of the jewels, like your Herald of Thunder on bosses, because you're not using it, and plug that in for Ubers. But I am too lazy to do that, so I don't do that. But you can do it if you want. But yeah, that wraps it up for this video. I will put a few clips of just random breaches I have recorded. I am finished with this character. Honestly, I would just say that they nerfed all the boss HP, so it's kind of just like, there's not really any point for me to push this character, because normally I like to push my characters to their limit in terms of killing all the content in the game. But there's no point, because the bosses are dying in one hit, so what am I to do, right? So that's kind of that's why I'm kind of swapping over to the next character. One more thing, Flicker Strike in Simulacrum, I highly do not advise doing Simulacrum with Flicker Strike, because the mobs in Simulacrum do not drop corpses, and you need corpses for your Profane Ritual. It literally says consumes a corpse, which means you can't get power charges to use your Flicker Strike, which means you're probably spending your entire time in there using Stormwave, and it's just not really fun and not really like kind of built for this, if that makes sense. But again, aside from that, 8 out of 8 for all of them, 10 out of 10 for the bosses. Have a showcase of Arbiter at the beginning of the video. It's good for everything else. Just avoid Simulacrums. You can do Delirium maps though, because in Delirium maps, you will kill other mobs for corpses. So that's still fine for Flicker Strike. Just no Simulacrum, because there's no corpses in there at all. And that's just that's just going to be a fundamental issue with Profane Ritual for Power Charge, because it requires a corpse. There's literally nothing we can do to get around it, unless you just play a build that just uses Stormwave only for Simulacrum. You could do it. It will be the same thing. You just put like a better link. You probably put Upheaval for more clear, or the new Fizzer support gem, Lineage one. You would 6-link this for more damage. It could work. But I just don't bother doing Simulacrums because of the way Profane Ritual works, and there's no corpses in Simulacrum. But yeah, that's going to cover it for the kind of Flicker Strike build guide. I just want to talk a little bit about what's next for me, right? Like, what build am I going to be playing next? So, two kind of angles right here. The first one is I'm playing hardcore trade. The second one is I'm playing SSF. The reason why is because I would like to have a bit longer progression. 1 week was really fast. But I want to just quickly talk about my friend here. So Uber Jaeger has posted a video on Poison Burst Pathfinder. It should be called Acidic Concoction Pathfinder. But just look at the damage, right? It is absurd. There is an interaction that has been discovered by a Korean player. And I'll just pull up the original kind of source for this. Give it a second to load. Basically, the way the interaction works is you use Vine Arrow. So I'll just show you like his channel. Again, full credits to this person. This is his build. I'm only playing it because it looks really cool. So right here, pull up his Xesht kill. And we can see like how fast he kills this boss. This is the build I'll be playing next, very likely, like 100% certain. Whether it's in hardcore or SSF or hardcore SSF, I'm not sure yet. So look at his damage. He's playing Acidic Concoction, and he's basically hitting for like 5 million damage each on the boss. The way this build works, you can go watch Uber's video, by the way. He explains it all there. But the TLDR is Vine Arrow, drops a little bulb. So you can see here, it drops a plant, and the plant can be poisoned, right? This plant can be poisoned. Acidic Concoction, it says consumes poison on hit, causes an acidic burst. If if you have 3 vine arrows underneath the boss, so in this case here, you'll see in a second. Right, so he's going to shoot one vine arrow right there. He's going to shoot another one in a second. Then he's going to poison burst it to poison the vine arrow. And then he's going to throw his acidic concoct. It stacks with the multiple vine arrows. You have 3 vine arrows there. You poison all 3 of them. You throw the acidic concoction. If it hits the boss, which is poison, and the 3 vine arrows, it will gain this damage 3 times, 4 times in this case. Because if you have 4 targets you're hitting. So that's kind of where this single target comes from. The reason why I wanted to play a poison build, I'll just show you his clear showcase, is because it has probably the best clear in the game, just hands down, because of the way Herald of Plague works. In case you have never used poison gems and skills before, Herald of Plague spreads the most damaging poison you kill to a nearby enemy. Right? When you kill them, the poison spreads. The reason why this is really, really, really strong is because one node on the tree, which I will just show you right here, it is this node right here. The poisons that are inflicted on targets that are not poisoned gain 60% increased effect. So you kill one target, it will spread its poison to all nearby targets who are not poisoned, which will then boost the damage they take, and then when they die, they will spread their poison again, and get increased again by this because it's hitting new targets that are not poisoned, and the result is that you just clear the screen. So I'll just show you his Abyss showcase. So he's just doing gem swaps, whatever, turning on companion. In a second, he will walk up to the Abyss, he will kill one mob, and the entire screen will die. Like the entire screen just full on proliferates and just full kills, as long as there's enough mobs close enough to each other so that Herald of Plague can pass the poison onto the next mob. The mobs here are not dying because the invincibility shrine, but I think that's the general gist of this build. This is what I'll be playing next. So if you're interested, feel free to watch, feel free to keep up. If you want a guide that's out already, go check out Uber. He's already covered this. But that's kind of the TLDR of what's next for me. But yeah, so that wraps it up for this video. Very, very long video. If you need help on leveling, check out the previous video. If you need to know when to swap, also, I've covered that. I've covered leveling, I've covered when to swap, I've covered getting to tier 15s using Hollow Palm, which is budget, and then I've covered how do you push into juiced tier 15s, Delirious, Abyss, Breach, and then kill all the Ubers in the previous video, and this one kind of just wraps it all up. This will be the end for this character. Very fun playing Flicker again. This league's been great. I love the new changes. However, progression is extremely accelerated because crafting. So I'm going to go play a harder game mode with a self-imposed difficulty to hopefully allow my character to last a little bit longer than a week. But yeah, thanks for the support on all the videos. Thanks for watching. If you like the video, like and subscribe. If you have a question, put it in the comments below. But yeah, I'm out. See ya.